Now, joining us on the program again is Andy Chyba. He's the candidate from the Green Party to run for member of the European Parliament here in Wales. Andy's been with us before regarding most things environmental and fracking. Now, Andy, welcome back to Worldview.
Good morning, Dennis. Good to see you again.
Good morning. What I'm trying to get a handle on now, since we're looking this week at the IPCC report and a number of issues related to fracking, is I'd like to kind of tie things up into a nice package as best we can here. Now, we've just come off of a 1,000-year flooding event in the state of Colorado, and aerial evidence has shown that 150 wells, fracking wells, have been affected, and clearly in many of the photos you can see the main storage tanks holding much of the fracking fluids have been tipped over and emptied and partly washed away in the floodwaters. Now, the big concern is, and question I have for you as a former geologist and somebody who understands all of this very well, what are some of the impacts of all of these chemicals on the soil as they move their way downstream, and what impact will that have on agriculture for the region?
You talk about a 1,000-year flood, and the first point to make is that those classifications are based on historical data, and what's going to happen is that 1,000-year flood is going to become a 100-year flood and so on with climate change and so on. So it may seem extraordinary now, but it's going to be something we're going to have to get increasingly used to. In terms of the damage to the fracking sites and so on, it's a little bit uncertain as to exactly what's involved there, because most of those sites have been fracked already. So whether there's actually fracking chemicals in those tanks or not is not known. What's perhaps more likely to be in most of those tanks is probably stored up flowback water, which has got plenty of issues in itself in terms of probably radioactive ingredients and heavy metals and so on. Those are probably more dangerous in terms of the impact on the residues in the soil and so on, because they're going to hang around much longer. There's already studies of these getting into the food chain.
Well, by heavy metal, you do mean also radioactive contaminants. I mean, we know that radon is there. We know that there's other. Give us an idea of some of the chemicals that might be found.
I don't know the geology of that area specifically enough to know for sure what's going to be down there. But very commonly associated with shale, you've got a variety of uranium and radium isotopes are very commonly associated with shale gas, with shale layers and so on. So, almost invariably there's going to be some nasty mix of stuff there.
And how does one get disclosure on some of these things? Because obviously, there's been a lack of oversight from the Environmental Protection Agency and others, as well as an intense amount of secrecy on the part of these oil and drilling companies to keep this information from the public. How does the public find out what's actually been sent out as a result of this flood?
It's impossible to know exactly what's there, and unless you go and do chemical analysis of the fluids themselves. In terms of the flowback water, nobody knows exactly what's in there until the due diligence of the analysis is done. And we've had issues with that in the UK in terms of what happened in Lancashire. They did analysis of the flowback water there and didn't even bother looking for some of the things that we knew was going down there. You can only look for things that you know to look for. I mean, there's always going to be things in the mix there which you're not even aware of to test. So therefore, until it becomes a problem further down the line, until someone starts getting symptoms of contamination of that, there may be things there which you don't even suspect.
He's Andy Chyba. He's the Green Party candidate for the European Parliament here in Wales, here on Worldview with Dennis Campbell. Now, Andy, let's talk a little bit about coal seam gas. There's been, we had a report earlier this week from somebody up in Scotland about the attempts and the rather dangerous process involved in actually creating explosions underground in former coal mines to release this gas that could be even worse than what we see in fracking. Talk a little bit about some of the dangers here in Wales, since this was a coal mining country for so long, and why this is such a sensitive issue, coal seam gasification.
In terms of coal seam gas, I mean, there's a long history of trying to remove that from a safety point of view, from even back to the days where we used to send the canaries down the coal mine and stuff like that. It's been done for many years and can as long as it's not, doesn't involve fracking and so on, be seen as a relatively positive thing. But when you start talking about coal gasification, which in there a whole different ball game as well. And basically, one of the key issues is that by the very nature of burning the coal, you diminish the volume of the rock there, and therefore you end up with a big cavity there. Because of the depths at which we're talking about with this technology, the actual surface impacts of the subsidence are likely to be fairly minimal. And you've got two big issues there affecting groundwater. Firstly, you've got the fact that when you've got subsidence, the whole tilt of layers, including the aquifers and so on, changes. The whole hydrology changes for extensive areas well away from the UCG sites. During the process, you've got intensive heating deep down, so that tends to heat up the layers above it. That sets up currents within the aquifers. So even if you haven't got any direct contamination, just the circulation of the water within the aquifers tends to stir up the heavy metals and stuff and whatever else is in the host rocks, and that brings those contaminants which tend to settle to the bottom up to the surface, back into the areas where boreholes perhaps are being tapped in. And again, you're starting to see evidence of contamination of livestock and with heavy metals and stuff like that in sites associated with this technology.
So you're really talking worst case scenario that the water supply has these heavy metals in it, as well as the potential for it working its way to the surface and affecting farm animals?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's part of the reason why the sites in the UK so far have tended to be coastal sites where the gasification is going to go up, underground, under the sea rather than under farmland. To some extent, that will diminish that direct threat to some extent, but it's not. What I don't think they fully understand is the impacts it has on the surrounding hydrology. When you start to get subsidence of layers deep down, it has knock-on effects to surrounding layers and so on. So the natural flows that are there at the moment can be significantly disturbed.
Yeah, indeed. As we saw earlier in the show, we talked about a company from Australia that was bragging about the fact that it has so many leases here, and it was absolutely stunning to hear this man on the tape say that well, you've got to be very careful and make sure that you get the gas and the water level right and everything when you're drilling. And he's the one that's supposed to be the expert. And indeed, another company had their operation shut down because it contaminated the water in Queensland. So it just seems to be a Pandora's box. Is it one that we actually need to be opening?
Well, this is the nub of the whole point. Really, is it's completely unnecessary. I mean, recent reports from the London School of Economics have told us quite categorically that we need to be leaving 60 to 80% of known fossil fuel reserves in the ground if we're going to avoid catastrophic climate change. So the very last thing we need to be doing is trying to find even more extreme forms of fossil fuels to add to that. And especially here in South Wales, I mean, one of the things I'll be talking about later today is the absolute criminal waste of our renewable resources here in Wales. The second biggest tidal range in the world, going up and down the Bristol Channel every day, completely and utterly untapped. That alone could provide enough energy to meet the average daily needs of Wales today.
Well, it's something that we'll be definitely watching as we move forward. Andy, I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us before what will indeed be a very busy day.
Indeed it will, and I thank you for this opportunity to talk about it again.
He's Andy Chyba. He's the Green Party candidate for member of the European Parliament in the coming election, and he joined us today from his home in South Wales. You're watching Worldview with Dennis Campbell. Stay right here.